Welcome to World of Marketing Podcast, a Foster Web Marketing production. Here's your host, Tom Foster.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the World of Marketing, where I, Tom Foster, talk with legal leaders about marketing mindset and the growth of law firm businesses. This episode is brought to you by my company, Foster Web Marketing. Since the internet was born, Foster Web Marketing has been the premier provider of customized websites, marketing, video, and strategic marketing solutions for elite law firms. Our unparalleled web technology and marketing systems set the gold standard in the industry, catering exclusively to a discerning clientele who demand the best. Partner with Foster Web Marketing to experience uncompromising quality, cutting-edge technology, and exceptional service. Visit fosterwebmarketing.com to discover how we can help you achieve your most ambitious goals and solidify your position at the forefront of your field. Today, it is my great honor to have Elise Holtzman as my guest. Elise is a former practicing lawyer, executive coach, and consultant, and the CEO of The Lawyer's Edge. For the past 15 years, she and her team have worked with law firms to grow thriving businesses by helping lawyers become better business developers and leaders. She is the creator of the Lawyers Making Rain program for law firms and the Ignite Women's Business Development Accelerator for women's partners and counsel. Elise speaks and writes frequently for lawyers and is the host of the Lawyer's Edge podcast. So Elise, welcome. It's so nice to meet you. Thanks for jumping on the podcast with me today.
Thanks so much, Tom, for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell me your background. You are a lawyer.
I am. So
yeah, tell me your whole background there.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about it. I did not plan to go to law school originally. I am the oldest child in my generation, and it was a generation of people who wanted their children to have higher education and do better than they did. So I think in my mind, doctor was at the top of the list. Maybe there was one other option, which was lawyer, but I never really thought about it. So I went to college. And I was pre-med the whole time I was there. I took a psychology major to make things a little more fun and easy for me, and ultimately made the decision that going into medicine wasn't a great fit. So I kind of started looking around, not knowing what my options would be. I did look into law. I looked into a few other things and wound up in law school, and it wound up being the best fit for me. So after I graduated, I went into private practice doing commercial real estate transactions at two huge law firms in New York City. And long story short, I wound up somewhat reluctantly, very reluctantly, leaving the practice of law because I was married. I'm still married to a lawyer. He was at a big firm. I was at a big firm. We were trying to make it. We kind of had no life. It was sort of like a bad movie. And then, the kids started coming. So back then there weren't a lot of opportunities. I tried what I thought was going to be part-time. They let me do that. I was then working 70 hours a week, making 80% of my salary. So ultimately I threw my hands up. I said, this thing doesn't work, because I didn't know anybody else who had done it. About 16 years ago, I decided to shift gears after being home for a while. And I found out about coaching. I found out about executive coaching, leadership coaching, wound up studying that, doing a full year certificate program, and then starting the Lawyer's Edge. And so ever since then, I've been working exclusively with lawyers and law firms, as you said, to help them grow thriving practices. And I love what I do. I mean, you and I know, and your listeners know, that law school doesn't teach this stuff. And so I'm able to, with my little team, step into the gap and help people achieve their goals.
Wow. Well, that's a great story. And it's interesting that, you did what you had to do to survive that, right? You're like, okay, well, both of us can't be working like this. Somebody's got to take care of the kids. I got to figure out.
And the person taking care of the kids was, it wound up being one of those things where we would see the baby. I mean, the baby's 28, by the way, but we would see the baby asleep in the crib in the morning, and we'd see her asleep in the crib again when we got home. Right. And we wound up with, two shifts of babysitters. We had the daytime sitter and the nighttime sitter. And at that point, it was like, what are we doing here? This is crazy. Right. So, yeah. So, and look, it was a mixed bag, right? Because on the one hand, I didn't want to leave the practice of law. I really loved what I was doing. I loved doing the commercial real estate deals. It was really fun. I was working with super smart people. And on the other hand, I recognize now and recognize then that most women don't have the option of staying home. And so, for me, it was a little bit of a a little frustrating. And at the same time, I was grateful to be able to do it.
Yeah, and you kind of get the best of both worlds, right? Because you still get to experience, through your coaching, law, right?
Right. For
And, and
sure.
yeah, so you get to experience that through others that you're working with. Um, but you were able to raise your family,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. I've been lucky.
Yeah. So good job. Well done on being the entrepreneur that you are to come up with this. So there's a lot of lawyer coaches out there.
Right.
Um, what sets you apart from most of those other people? What is your
Great question. So when I first started coaching, and again, this is going back 16 years ago or so, there were not that many people doing what I was doing. I think that when I first started, there were maybe 5 or 6 coaches across the country who were lawyers who were doing coaching. And I remember them setting up like back then a conference call just to get acquainted, network with each other, get to know each other a little bit. And now there are so many coaches that are working with lawyers and so many former practicing lawyers who are coaches working with lawyers that I think
Mhm.
it is important to distinguish one from the other. So for starters, um, I am a lawyer. Right. And I think that that is one thing that makes me different. It's not the only thing that makes me different. In the beginning, it was one of the only things that made me different, or at least I thought it was. Over time, as more people stepped into the marketplace who were former practicing lawyers, I started thinking, what does make me different? How do I describe myself? Because as you well know, as a marketer, you've got to be able to tell people how you are different and what value you bring to the table. And so for me, part of it became, first of all, really understanding how lawyers operate. And not just because I practice law, it wasn't just based on my experience, but understanding what is our education? What are the personality types that tend to show up in the law? How does that help us? How does that hinder us? And then putting together a system, if you will, for business development, that's like a structure that people can kind of hang their business development activities on, for example, because lawyers really like structure. And so what I like to say is that we do a combination of education and implementation. You're not just showing up and having the coach say, okay, what are you doing today? What did you do last week? Who did you call? For business development. It's really having a system in place so that lawyers can customize the programs for themselves, the program for themselves. They can customize business development or leader development based on a certain set of principles that we know work, but having them do it in a way that aligns with who they are, their personality, their likes and dislikes, their practice area, their geography, their age and stage of life, how much time they have for various things, and make it work for them.
Wow. And people, people work with people they like, right? That's how it works. I was just looking through your website and, it's very cool what you've got. I love this program that you have, Ignite.
Yes.
Tell me, unlock rainmaking potential with Ignite. What is Ignite? Tell me
So
about
I started Ignite after thinking about it for a really long time and thinking, hey, I'm going to do this thing at the beginning of 2020, when we all know the pandemic came and changed some things around. I did launch Ignite last year. And so Ignite, what I've typically done over the years is take my program, which is called Lawyers Making Rain, into law firms. And so it's a combination of two things. It's a combination of training, workshops, seminars, from one to many, depending on what the appetite is at the law firm for diving into particular topics, and then followed up by coaching, individual coaching or group coaching, so that you get a combination of learning, which is nice, except we need people to take action as well, and then following up with the coaching to help them take action. And so I've been going into law firms for years, doing these programs, helping lawyers learn about business development, helping them figure out how to make it happen for themselves. And I had this dream of bringing a whole bunch of women together from different law firms. I started asking myself the question, is business development different for women? And I personally think the answer to that is absolutely not. And also, yes, right? So the absolutely not is because the principles of business development and marketing and those sorts of things are those principles. They stand the test of time. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. But when it comes to women, because of the way that women have been socialized, because of the networks available to them, because of, historical things, because of a whole host of different reasons, right? We know that not as many women are getting into leadership positions and rainmaking positions as we might otherwise expect. So I thought it would be fun to pull together some really cool women, junior to mid-level partners, to help them learn about business development, and then to also support one another and talk about the issues that are top of mind for them. So that's why we created the Ignite Business Development Accelerator for Women. And we're in our second year now of the program. It's a 9-month program, and it incorporates in-person events, virtual workshops, and group coaching, as well as individual coaching. And I have to tell you that it's gone beyond my expectations, in the sense that when you put these people in a room together and they get to know each other, even though they're all over the country and in Canada, within the first 2 weeks, they were already making referrals to each other, supporting each other, giving each other ideas. One of them was working out of somebody else's office when she was in that city. And so for me, it's been really fun to put this thing together and watch it to turn into something that I really could have only dreamed about.
Well done. I mean, like, for sure. Like, this is a great model that you've produced to.
It's a lot of fun. And I think that I do think that when you put those learning elements together, right? Because a lot of lawyers will say, I don't even know where to get started. I know I'm supposed to do business development. I don't even know, where do I go? What do I do? Should I be more aggressive? Does that work? Should I not be most aggressive? I don't have a lot of time for this. Got all sorts of things that are getting in their way. So when you teach them what some of these skills are, you help them shift their mindsets about it, and then you help hold their feet to the fire so they're taking action. They really do start to move the needle.
Are these do you go to the firm? Are these at the firm that do you?
No. So for this particular program, I have it right now. It's out of New York City, right? So the in-person events are in New York City at an event space. All the women come in from out of town, or, just take the train or whatever if they're in the local area. And then everything else is basically on Zoom. So we're doing webinars on Zoom. We're doing group coaching sessions on Zoom, where people can just come and talk about what's working, what's not working, ask their questions. And what's great about it is they're not just hearing things from me, they're hearing suggestions from their peers.
Right.
And that's where some of the most value is to be in a room with other people who are similarly situated, and learn about their experiences. You get to figure out, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what might I try, that sort of thing.
And where do you get most of your referrals from?
I love this question because I'm always talking to my clients about how to get referrals, right? And so what I have found is that over the years, I have been able to get most of my referrals. I think it started out really through a lot of the speaking engagements that I was doing. So I was doing for bar associations and other legal, not-for-profit type organizations, a lot of seminars, workshops, talking to people. And then it really turned into word of mouth. So a lot of it comes through referrals. I also, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I have my own podcast called The Lawyer's Edge, which is the same name as my business. And I started it. I was sitting here in the summer of 2020 in the pandemic. I'm a very strong extrovert, and I love talking to people. And I was sitting here in my office thinking to myself, good grief, what am I supposed to do with myself sitting here? And I thought, I'll start a podcast. And listen, I mean, I'm one of the last college classes that went to college with a typewriter. So the idea of starting a podcast was a little beyond me, but I said, I figure I could figure it out. And that's another way that, like you, I get to talk to really cool people on my podcast. I get to learn about them, get to know them a little bit. And then in the same way, I use it to raise my profile by posting it online, so people start to see it. And this is, when I think about where my referrals come from, and I teach this stuff to other people, I have these 3 pillars of business development that I think are really important. Like I said, I think a structure for lawyers is important because it can feel like this big, cloudy, confusing thing. And so it really hits a couple of those pillars, one of which is relationship development. So I get to know really cool people. And then the second is visible expertise, right? Because let's just, for funsies and giggles, assume that I'm like the world's best coach and trainer. If I'm doing it for a few people and nobody knows about me, I'm not going to be able to grow my footprint and get to work more with the kinds of folks that I want to work with. So if you combine the relationship development and the visible expertise, I think that some people will come to you because they've seen you speak and they think you might know something and you deliver value. And some people will come to you because somebody else thinks you know something and maybe has worked with you or seen you. So that referral source and that trust among other people is really important as well. And so, I'm always impressed when somebody just finds me on Google, which does happen. So I guess whoever is doing my website is doing a better job than I would have done for sure. So that happens as well. But it's mostly just because I've really focused on one industry and have tried to deliver as much value in that industry as I can.
Now, are you all over the country? Were you or just in New York or?
Yeah, so I'm all over the country. I've got clients in Canada and many different states. I've actually most recently, so I've had a few clients outside the country. I had, in South America and even in Dubai, I had a couple of clients. Most recently, I did a really cool business development program, a series of workshops for a law firm that is based in Portugal and has major offices in Angola and Mozambique. And so, that was particularly interesting for me because, these are different cultures, right? They're practicing law in English, but for many of them, it's not their first language. And there are different cultures and ways of doing things in those countries. And so it was a challenge for me because I wanted to make sure, right, that I was obviously doing it in a way that was appropriate for them. So that was super fun as well.
Yeah, we've done some international websites where we have to jump through some different hoops and search is different. And
yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
It stretches you.
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot of experience. Is there any, do you usually work with big firms, small firms, solo firms, any particular kind of firm?
When I first started, first of all, when I first started, I thought I was going to be working with big law. That was all I knew. I was with two, call it AmLaw 75 law firms. And so that was really all I knew. I knew that there were these zillions of smaller firms out there, but I didn't know too much about them. And my husband was at a big law firm too. So that was our experience. I was trying very hard in the beginning to stay close to home because we don't have family around here. I really didn't want to travel because somebody had to hold down the fort with the kids, and my husband was doing a big commute. And so I started working. I got involved. I'm in New Jersey, just outside of New York, and I got involved in the New Jersey State Bar Association solo and small firm section. So I did a lot of work with those firms, which is I find always interesting because you've got the person who's in charge of everything, right? They're wearing all the hats, and it can be a real challenge. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there, but a real challenge. And I learned a lot about the differences between big law and small law. There's a lot that's the same, but there's certainly a lot that's different. Over time, as my kids grew up and became obnoxiously old, which is what they are now, I started reaching out again to, work with mid-sized to large law firms. So I would say the sweet spot for us is probably between 20 lawyers and let's say 200 lawyers. But we have coaches on our team. We have one coach on our team in particular who kind of specializes in working with solos. He was a solo himself back in the day. And then, I have clients from law firms as, 850 lawyers, 1,200 lawyers, that kind of thing. So it runs the gamut depending on what it is that they're looking for.
What is the biggest problem that you find is common to both the solo law firm and the big law firm?
It's very competitive, right? We're in a very competitive marketplace. There are a lot of lawyers out there, and clients have choices, and they don't have to go into your office anymore. So they can reach out even further than they've been able to reach out before. Legal marketing has also taken hold in a way that I didn't see, or none of us saw 25 or 30 years ago. So now you've got some firms that have robust marketing and business development departments that are there to help the lawyers and help the firm. And even some small firms are learning that those sorts of things are important. I think the biggest challenge is that there's still something that is so important about lawyers themselves getting involved in business development activities and not simply expecting to rely on marketers to help them. So the kind of work you do, for example, Tom, with websites and things like that. So all the things that I think of as marketing, let's say one to many, websites and sponsorships and all of the kinds of things, email blasts and blogging and all of those sorts of things are absolutely critical to support the visibility and marketing of a law firm. But the lawyers need to be involved because people are still, for the most part, except maybe at the highest levels, with the biggest budgets and the biggest law firms and the biggest companies, hiring lawyers. You don't wake up in the morning and say, I'd like to hire Fried Frank today, which is the law firm I started with, to do my work. You want to find the right person. And so I think the biggest challenge there is having lawyers understand that that should be part of their job description, that business development is part of their job description, is going to run to their benefit so they can call the shots in their career over time, because we know that the more business you bring in, the more business you support, the more compensation you're going to earn, the more control you have over your own career, the more leadership opportunities you have, et cetera. And it's also important for the firm. The firm is a for-profit business. The challenge is lawyers are also practicing law, right? And so, you look at a regular corporation, some company, they've got someone who designs the widgets. They've got someone else who manufactures the widgets. They've got someone else who markets the widgets, someone else who sells the widgets, someone else who runs the company, someone, who services the widgets. We expect lawyers to do everything. And so I think that's still the number one problem, is that while some law firms are getting better at understanding they have to bring on professionals that do other things and sort of chunk up those responsibilities, I'm not saying abdicate them, but delegate them for sure and bring in the right people. Lawyers are going to continue to run around with their hair on fire. And many of them will avoid marketing and business development activities because they're focused solely on the work on their desk. That's what they're getting rewarded for. The more hours they bill, the more they're getting rewarded.
Yeah, and it's a tricky business to market. And to your point, you have to really be all things, right? You have to, because you yourself is the brand that you're selling, right? It's your name, and you got to get out there, and you got to get a reputation, and you got to get people talking about, and you got to talk about yourself. You got to because that's your product, that's your work product that you're selling, and you need to work both the referral relationships from other lawyers. That's where you're going to get a lot of your business. And then through your friends and family. And that's where people first go. People first, if something happens to them, nobody wakes up and says, like, I can't wait to call a lawyer today. Right.
Right.
Nobody does that. But, if something happens to you, whatever it is, or you need legal help, whatever it is, injured, immigration, divorce, estate planning, tax, whatever, you're in trouble, you're mad at somebody, we all run to a lawyer. But the first thing that we think about is, do I know any lawyers? Do I know anybody that's a lawyer? That's step one that we go through on our brain. And then, it doesn't even matter what area of law they practice. They're a lawyer, and you go to them first and say, look, this has happened to me, buddy. Can you help me? And, maybe they can. Maybe they are that kind of lawyer. Or they'll say, no, I can't, but this guy can, right? And you got to be known.
Well, and you have to know other people too. Like, to your point, people come to you because they trust you.
Right.
And people make referrals because they want to be a hero for somebody else. So recently, my best friend from high school, who we went to high school in Maryland, but we both wound up in New Jersey. And, we saw them over the weekend, and she texted me the other day and she said that they need a trust and estates lawyer because they have to do some work on their planning. And could I send her to somebody? And so, if I'm just sitting in my office grinding out work and I'm not paying attention to the community around me, I can't make those referrals. And I'm not going to get referrals flowing in my direction either. So I think that, being part of, I think of it as I talk to my clients a lot about the concept of who, what, and where. Like before you go out thinking about how do I engage in business development activities, having a really clear sense of who your target market is, who are your ideal clients, who are the kinds of clients you work with all the time, and then also who are your referral sources, right? You mentioned this. There's two parts of the who. So who are they? And be part of those communities, right? Maybe you're part of a lawyer community and you do a lot of referring to one another. Maybe you represent manufacturing companies or, special needs parents. And so you become part of the communities in which they operate so that you're covering both sides of your who and getting known there.
That's right. Because people hire you have to establish that know, like, trust, right? And, but what if you already have established know, like, trust with one person, if you already worked with them and they're in an environment where you'd love to work with other people like that in that environment, then that's the best kind of referral that you can get. Like some, client, like if you're big time at church, right? At church, if you're like in motorcycle group, sports, all kinds of things that if you're a runner, a bike person, if you like to smoke cigars in a cigar club, whatever you like to do, drink wine in a wine group, start there. But the point is that you want to get known within that group, within those groups, so that they refer.
For sure. And I think one of the things that gets in people's way, lawyers I find all the time say things like, I don't want to be salesy. Right. I don't want to pound my chest and tell everybody how great I am. That's so unseemly.
They should just come to me. Right.
Know it. You just don't right. Exactly. They should just figure. It's like that from that Kevin Costner movie, Field of Dreams. If I build it, they will come. I hang out my shingle, I put up a website, and they're just going to show up. And, I wish that were the case. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And so the thing is, the good news is that as a lawyer, you never have to be salesy. You never have to be pushy. In fact, it doesn't really work. Right. The idea is more about delivering value.
Just tell the story. Tell the story of what you've done.
Exactly.
Right. That's all you need to do is like, here's what I've done for people. And, don't do it in a braggadocious way. Do it in a way that's, very kind and it's a story about them. You're not the hero, right? The lawyer's not the hero in the story. They're the guide in the story, right? And if they approach it that way, and this is what we teach in marketing, right? I mean, that you've got to have this attitude where they're coming to you because they've got a problem. They're not excited to talk to you. They don't really want to talk to you. It took a lot for them to get up the gumption to talk to you. And, they're not going to be, it's not a delightful thing that they're doing. Right.
Actually, I'm talking to a law firm right now about the concept of a client experience as opposed to just client service, right? Client service is like, you give me money, I give you legal stuff, right? I give you documents, I help put all this stuff together for you, I solve a problem, I go to court for you, whatever it may be. But to your point, this is not the most fun thing for the client much of the time. And so if you can provide some sort of experience, even from they saw you on the Little League field, your kids are playing ball and you're talking on the side and you're just a fun person and you're warm and you're kind and you stand in service. They're like, oh God, I can't find a babysitter for this weekend. And you're like, oh my God, like we're not using our babysitter this weekend. She's amazing. Let me have her call you. Right. If you can go into the community with this idea of standing in service of other people, and I'm not talking about giving away free legal services. I'm talking about just being a human being. Right. Then you're going to develop those relationships where they feel like instead of this being, it may still be unpleasant for them, but they go, you know what, if I call Tom, I know I'm going to have the best experience I could possibly have under these circumstances. Or if Tom can't help me, he's going to get me to the right person. And so I think it's just really important to remember those things. You've got to develop those relationships. You can't be a best kept secret. You can't be hiding in your office, toiling away in obscurity, grinding out fantastic work. Because Tom, you and I both know this, right? If you and I do the same thing and you're a better lawyer than I am, like you are a better technician, I'm good, but I'm no Tom Foster, right? But if I'm the one out there getting involved in the community and talking to people and writing articles or speaking or being on a podcast or whatever it may be, people get to know me. They see that I know what I'm talking about. I'm the expert. You're not the expert because they don't even know about you.
And you hear lawyers complain about this all the time, don't they? Like they always complain, like, how does that guy get? He's like, he's getting all the cases. Well, he's working for it, right? He's out there working for it. That's why.
Right. And he's not hiding in his office.
Such a great lawyer. He's not a great lawyer. Well, he's figured it out.
But that's the delusion that I think many of us have as lawyers, because think about where we came from. We self-selected into law school. If we had wanted to become salespeople, we wouldn't have gone to law school. We would have gone into sales.
Right.
Right. If we had wanted to start a business, we would have gone and become entrepreneurs. So we went to law school partly because most of us who went to law school were pretty smart in school. We did well. We got good grades. You know, parents were proud of us. Teachers thought we were great. Somebody told us we were smart. So we did well in college or university. And then we went to law school. We also tend to like structure. And we like rules. So it was like, okay, I'm going to get in here. I'm going to be a really good student. I'm going to learn all this law. I'm going to do a great job as a lawyer. Again, that's not the full job description. Right. The full job description involves having to market your legal services. And so what I always ask people to do is to change your job description. You're not just a lawyer anymore. You're in the business of marketing your legal services.
Yeah, you got to run your business. You got to run your business. You got staff now. You've got HR. You've got, accounting. You've got to run a profitable business.
Right. And also not to forget that there are other people out there who are better than you at doing these things.
Always.
Right. There are people who are chief operating officers or executive directors or controllers or whatever they are. You can't do everything. You shouldn't be doing everything. Figure out what the highest and best use of your time is, and then delegate the heck out of everything else.
That's what I recommend. Like if you get yourself a CEO, to run that business for you, right? I mean, if you want like somebody that knows how to do it, especially somebody that's had experience running a law firm, for profit, hell yeah.
And there are so many resources out there now. I mean, when I started practicing law, there was really no such thing as legal marketing. Now you've got the Legal Marketing Association, LMA, I'll go to a national conference. They'll get 1,200 people in the room, 1,500 people in the room. So there are so many legal marketers out there. There's something, the ALA is the Association of Legal Administrators. So these are people that are great at operations. To your point, CEOs, COOs, people inside of law firms helping the lawyers run the law firm and doing a lot better job than the lawyers can do because they're trained and they're experienced. And so even if you're a small firm, there are people out there that can help you. And, I've talked to a lot of smaller law firm managing partners and owners who are very, very nervous about this sort of thing, and understandably so. But I think that if you can surround yourself with people who have tried this stuff, they're struggling with some of the same challenges, and see how they're making it work. You could have a fractional CFO, for example, who works for you 2 days a week. It doesn't have to be full time. So I think there's so much opportunity out there to grow your practice, however big or small it may be, into what you want it to look like.
Yeah, and you gotta take, as you said, you gotta take risks, you gotta take chances. This is an investment in yourself.
Well, and that's something else. It's funny that you say that, because that's something else that lawyers are not, again, we don't go to law school because we're risk takers. Right. Many of us go to law school because it's like, this makes sense, right? This is a structure. This is kind of like in boxes. I get this, right? This all makes sense. I mean, that's why I mentioned to you before that, I came up with kind of the structure for business development, because I know that's what lawyers like to hang their hats on. And so, let's talk about making it less risky for them rather than having it continue to feel risky. But it can be really challenging for lawyers. But again, there's so much opportunity. There's so much help out there. If you're willing to admit that you don't have to know everything, and you don't know everything, and there are other people that can step in and help you with it. So I love seeing how the legal profession is growing and changing, and, respecting all of these other professionals that are out there that can be helpful.
So, Elise, how does somebody get a hold of you if they would like to talk to you about working with you?
Well, I invite everybody to go to our website, which is thelawyersedge.com. So visit us there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me, Elise Holtzman, at LinkedIn. And also, I invite people to listen to our podcast. So that's the Lawyer's Edge podcast. And we are on all of the usual podcast outlets. So you can find us pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts.
Well, there you go, everybody. Well, I appreciate you, Elise, helping lawyers out there, right? Doing this a long time. Great job. And thank you so much for doing it.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. This is fun.
Oh, yeah. And we'll have you back again. Okay.
That'd be great. Take care.
Okay. You hang out. Thanks, everybody.